Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Monday Morning Coach Show. I noticed you are still gloating in your glory over there. Still had the last week
Yeah,
game up there.
I forgot to change that out. I was doing so much on all this other, trying to set things up. I did a little bit different on a couple of things we've added. I just forgot that I did that on the intro and outro. That's all right. I'll fix it next week. I'll
It's all
remember.
good. Yeah, no, it's really awesome that everyone kind of bears with us. We're just kind of doing this for fun. Like I say, King James will just he'll leave the old Longhorns up there as long as he can, because
Number
of
one. Number
kind of kind
one.
of kind of what happened with the old Cowboys. I kind of got lucky in fantasy because I had the Cowboys defense, but then I had Kamara, so
Hmm.
so Kamara made up for the Cowboys defense, but uh, it's still fun. I love doing fantasy.
Well, that's part of doing all this. It's just so everybody can come in, have a good time, listen, what happened for the week and all that. Next week, there will be some good games in college. So I'm going to have three game of the weeks next week. So
Okay.
uh, we've got some top teams playing each other. And there was actually another one. I was trying to think it was Missouri and somebody, but
Was
uh,
that K State?
no, not K State.
Oh, you're
Um,
saying for next week because that was
the
this week,
next week.
wasn't it?
Yeah, this week's K State and Arizona. But I left
Nice.
that one out because the other ones were bigger games than that, in my opinion. But the thing I like most about everything that's happening right now is this coming week is when we start seeing a lot of changes because you're going to see top teams playing each other. And from here on out, you're going to start seeing things change quite a bit through college. And
Oh,
that's
nice.
one of the things I like about it. I know one of the games I have this week is Michigan and USC. So I think that'll be a real good one.
Uh oh. Look who's popping in. Dun dun dun. Dun.
The Saints look good, man. Uh, they whooped uh, Dallas. I mean, they just flat whooped them. There's no other way about it. They just whipped the living hell out of them.
I
So
mean, when you let in five rushing touchdowns, it was at least five, but I think he had a receiving touchdown too or something. But that was that was incredible display of yardage. I mean, Camaro was good for 44 points in fantasy. That was awesome.
yeah, they look good. And then another game that we'll have next week is Oklahoma State and Utah. I think Utah's number 12 and Oklahoma State is number 14, if I'm not mistaken. And then
Okay.
the other game we'll have is number 6, Tennessee playing Oklahoma, which is number 15. So those will be some pretty big games. And if I'm not mistaken, I think USC is 11 and Michigan, I think, still stayed at 18, if I'm not mistaken. So you got three really good games next week that we'll be watching. So
Nice.
looking forward to those next week. Going to have a bigger breakdown. In other words, the college section we'll do each week is going to get more expanded as we go through this. So it's going to be awesome. I
Well,
love it.
the game that is always big around here is the Rocky Mountain Showdown between CU and CSU, and CU just crushed. That was a real
Yeah.
good, dominant game, and like I say, I kind of wasn't surprised when I saw it, but CSU's got a good team, so I kind of expected a little bit more from their offense, but like I say, altogether it was a good battle, and CU just dominated them
You know why that game's so great, don't you?
because it's at Mile High,
No,
San Francisco.
it's like the Texas and Texas A&M rivalry. The
Right.
players that don't make it to Colorado or Texas are the leftovers that go to A&M and Colorado State. And those players want to show you passed on me. we're gonna whip your rear end. That's why it's such a grudge match.
Right.
It's true. I mean, anybody can say it won't, but that is true.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
dude.
the
Yeah, I couldn't
Ravens.
believe the Ravens lost to the Raiders. Like that was crazy. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point, Daniel. Thanks for joining us tonight. But it's that was crazy. Like especially that I think that's the number one thing with like fantasy because being a Broncos fan, we don't have a whole lot of winning going on. So just get at least I get a win on fantasy instead of
Hmm.
have my team win. But that's kind of the whole point. And you'll have to check out my podcast. I'll send you a link. I did my Willie Jackerson experiment this week on the history of fantasy football. So
I know quite a bit about the fantasy and uh, when it started and all of that. And a lot of people don't realize that when you look at the first fantasy football that took place, it was actually a draft. It wasn't like games played, it was a draft, is where it took place. And the first league, I can't remember the exact name, but I remember it was in California, in Oakland, was the first league. I remember that. And uh, uh, and that first draft, when it the guy that put together, his name was like Wizenbach or some shit like that. I just remember it was something similar to that, and he started that back in the '60s. So it really got started back then, and then it when they really did the first one, it was a draft. It wasn't even games. A lot of people don't know that about the history of fantasy, but that's how now it's you know everything's on the computer and everything. And uh, I was trying to remember,
we'll see.
but
Like that's what I was saying. Like the quiz is gonna be real easy for you this week. See?
is that what it's about?
Yeah. So,
Oh yeah,
so
I
it
I used to play fantasy all the time. I mean, I started back a long time ago, and this year I didn't play because I got so much going on. I just forgot really to get into the league and all that. But I enjoy doing it and all that, and that's I like what we're talking about because next year we're going to start our own fantasy league through Monday Morning Coach, and we're actually going to have it. You can pick the players and everything, but your offense and defense, you play the team that's there. So how many teams are in the NFL? 32, I think. Isn't it? You got 32 teams. We'll have one for each team. You'll have a team and you play that offense and defense. But as far as the draft goes, we'll treat it just like they did at the first, and you pick your players draft wise, and draft them out. And but that makes it interesting. You can't pick another team. So like I'll be the Cowboys. I play their offense and defense every week. Well, this week I would have sucked in defense. You see what I'm saying? But
true.
that
Yeah.
that's your team you play on. But then again, my players could have picked it up. So
Actually, Dak didn't do too bad. I mean, he was all right. But
let me tell you
uh,
about
I I
Dak.
knew that I knew that I had to throw up a meme that made fun of Dak because I know you're not a Dak fan.
We'll play that in just a second. But I'll say one thing. You ever notice Dak? He always takes the the short to medium completions. You hardly ever see him throwing it down the field because he's all. I've said this about him all the time. He cares more about his stats than he does the team. Put the stats
Right.
up. Show you're a high percentage throwing quarterback, picking up yards here and there, but you really never stretch the field. No,
True.
nobody fears Dak. And
Yeah.
that's one reason I always liked Tony Romo. I always called him gunslinger because it was nothing for him to throw 20, 40, 50 yards down the field. He did that every game a couple of times. Oh, that's one
True.
reason I always liked Tony Romo. And all you have to do is listen to him call games. I mean, hell, they got on him because he'd be up there telling you what they were going to do. I think he'd be a hell of a coach. I wish he would coach. But anyway, all right,
All right.
let's get to our meme. How about that?
Let's do it.
All right.
did love the part about Dak's trophy case.
Yeah.
He don't got very many trophies in that case.
No, he
Pretty
doesn't.
empty.
I think that's funny. But that meme pretty much sums up what I think about that. You know, it was funny because when Romo got hurt and then he was able to come back, they stuck with Dak, and I was, you know, there were people, oh, Dak Prescott. I said Dak Prescott. And I was saying it back then. I could see as the season went on because they were playing him back. And then as the season started getting in, they started moving up on him. So they saw he never threw it down. They're thinking he was like Tony Romo. If Tony Romo would have came back and they'd let him start, I think Dallas had a good chance at the Super Bowl that year. And then after that, what happened? Tony Romo, he took and what?
Yo, what's up, man? Yeah.
What's the class about
Oh,
it today?
we're not. We're mostly doing just football. We're not
Yeah.
doing any electrical today, but
Yeah, we're talking college and NFL football. We still got the High Voltage Live podcast. We do that on Thursdays. This is something that we do on Mondays that we enjoy doing. We've been talking about it for about 2 years, and then we had just had so much going on, so we brought this up and started doing the football podcast. And I already get a lot of messages from people, I'm going to be on next week, like, oh, come on, we're just having fun. So,
and like James is taking over like the college side of it. I'm taking over the NFL side of it, and not saying I'm like any kind of a expert analysis, but I have a lot of I have a lot of help from like my family, my brothers and stuff. They're real big football guys, so.
Oh yeah, let's
big
get in.
shout out.
Let's go ahead and get into college because I'm ready.
Do it.
This is going to be awesome this week to see the changes that took place.
It's time for King James's college breakdown and rankings.
All right, this week we had Kansas State and Arizona, two Wildcats teams that took on each other. And I really thought Arizona had a better team, but Kansas State showed they actually have a good team. I think it's going to be interesting in the Big 12 this year watching to see. I think there's three teams right now that have proven themselves so far. That's Utah, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. I think that's going to be one of your three teams that wins the Big 12. But we'll see. Right now, that's what's looking good. But with that said, I want to take a look and go through the college football polls. And as I did last week, we showed where we had the playoff predicator. And after the first week is on the left, then this is this week, the third week. And we had Texas that was set there at first. They were at 91%. They maintained that. And Ohio State dropped down to 78%. And Alabama actually moved up to 84% from 79%. And,
nice.
Sort of looking at it, I agree with this. They had Georgia at 84%. They dropped them down to 70%. I'm going to tell you what, Georgia is about to have a hard time, actually. We'll know this next week, in 2 weeks, because they got bye weeks this week. But Georgia and Alabama are going to hook up in 2 weeks, and that will be one of the games of the week. No doubt that's going to be one of the games of the week. And
nice.
I have a feeling if Georgia loses that, then they're going to end up coming to Texas. I think the way Texas is looking right now, I mean their starting quarterback, Quinn Ewers, went out after about a quarter and a half, and he had already racked up 140 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. He was dissecting them.
Right.
And then we just said, okay, man, our quarterback's hurt, so we bring in this guy named Arch Manning, the family of football, first family of football. And what's Arch Manning do? He throws 4 touchdowns and then rushes 1 touchdown for 64 yards, I think it was, and
Right.
just dissected them. So Georgia, they could lose to Alabama and lose to Texas. And then they also have to play Tennessee, who jumped them in the playoff predictor here, and they moved from 66 to 73%. And Ole Miss actually went up to 70% from 60%. Now I'm looking
Nice.
at that. There's 5 teams right there in the top 6 that are in the SEC. And this week will be interesting because, uh, and I don't, I said this last week. You remember this? I said Miami should be higher than what they are because I think they're going to win the ACC. And
Right.
they had them at 40, moved them to 53. I think they should be up around 75%. I,
Right.
I don't see anybody in the ACC stopping them. I just don't. And Penn
Well,
State,
and then if you look, if you're gonna play Texas, you're gonna get dissected.
we're going to see, and I'm going to show that here in just a little bit. But
Okay.
Penn State, I mean, you got Ohio State, Penn State, and USC. Those are all Big Ten right there. Now, we'll see what Southern Cal's about because, yep,
Oh, yep. Coming up. What you said? 3 weeks, James? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Okay.
After this week, then it'll be the next week. So,
Nice.
no, I take that back. They they both play this week, then they're off the next week, and then play the next.
So three
So,
weeks.
yeah, 3 weeks.
Okay.
And when you look at this here, South Carolina or South USC, Southern Cal, they're
Hmm.
at 44% right there. If you look, this is interesting. They didn't lose, but they dropped down to 36%. That
Right.
that sort of blew me away. Is there something they're seeing that they don't like? I guess this will probably change a little bit depending on this week's game with Michigan.
True.
Now, the other one that's interesting, you're going to see down there 18% Utah. You- They're not even on there right now. Well, why is that? Because nobody's 100% sure if their quarterback's going to be back or not.
Who are you talking about?
Utah,
Oh, Utah. Okay.
yeah. And then as I looked at it, you have Central Florida. I'm going to tell you, Central Florida should have lost that game to TCU.
Right.
I I was not really that impressed with Central Florida. Now, I will say this Oregon played really good this week. They were at 30%, they jumped up to 49%.
Yeah, I
So,
did watch that Oregon game. That was pretty good.
yeah, they played real good. So then you're going to come down, and right now you're going to have a G5 school. Who is a G5 school looking like they're going to get that 12th spot? Well, a lot of people are looking at thinking it's going to be Boise State.
Right.
So that
And
that's what
I don't see Clemson in the mix anymore.
no. Well, yeah, Clemson, they're not there. Now, this was the preseason ranked. I'll just show this. We went over this last week, but when we get through each one of these, this is where we get into week 3, and this is where you saw some changes take place. In the AP poll, Texas jumped Georgia to the number 1 spot, which I think was warranted after Georgia. I mean, they played Kentucky, and they only beat Kentucky 13-12. And
Right.
I was watching Stoops. I was like, "Do you not know how to go for it on 4th down? Force the issue. The D. I'm gonna tell you, Georgia's offense looked inept, and that's why I think if
True.
they don't get something figured out when they get to Alabama, Alabama's going to run and pass on them. If they have that kind of offense against Alabama, they're losing that game. And they're damn sure going to lose it against Texas because Texas looks like they got one hell of a defense.
Yeah,
So,
and I think a lot of times when a lot of teams get that like high spot up there, they tend to play down to their opposition, and that's not really gonna work when you start getting to like the Ohio States and the Ole Misses and the Tennessees and stuff. Like I say, Tennessee looked pretty sharp. I really was pretty impressed with Tennessee this week.
well, so far looking at Tennessee, uh, I just don't think uh, Tennessee has really played anybody. Um,
True.
I mean, sure, they're going out and they're kicking the living hell out of all the teams they're playing, which is what you're supposed to do if you're a good team. But I think last week they played, what was it, Kent State,
Hmm.
and they played them. Well, hell, I don't even think Kent State has any. I don't even think they have scholarship players on that team. That's just a football team that they have put together. I don't even think there's any scholarship players on there.
True.
So I think that will be pretty interesting. Then I think who's the other one they played? Didn't they play Middle Tennessee? I think.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
I think they played Middle Tennessee and uh, the only other. No, I take that back. They played Chattanooga.
Oh, that's
Chattanooga.
right.
Chattanooga, and then the week after that they played North Carolina State, who doesn't have anything. So this
Yeah.
week they're going to play Oklahoma, and I look at Tennessee. I think they're. I think Oklahoma. I watch their game. They don't look that great. I think Oklahoma's going to. I think Tennessee's going to roll them, but then they get Arkansas and Florida, who doesn't look that great to me. And then they get Alabama, and then later on, about the third game to the end of the year, they get Georgia.
All
So
right.
they got
What
two
was
hard games
what was
coming.
our game of the week? Wasn't it Wisconsin and Alabama?
No, I didn't consider that a big game. I stated before that game even started that I thought Alabama was going to roll Wisconsin, and plus Wisconsin's quarterback got hurt, I think,
Oh,
and
okay.
Alabama just whether they beat them 45-10 or something like that. But
Did we even
Alabama,
pick it? Did we even pick a game for this week?
yeah, I picked Kansas State and uh,
Arizona.
Arizona, and
Gotcha.
uh, and if you look at that, uh, we had uh, number 13 Kansas State, and I thought it was interesting because uh, I had a feeling Arizona may be a little better than what they were. And
True.
that didn't happen. So if you look here, we'll go back, you'll see we had Kansas State at 14 and Arizona was at number 20. Those were only two top 10 teams playing. Well, this week, you'll see Kansas State moved up to 13. Arizona's not even listed. And the reason they're
Right.
not listed because they got their rear end whooped is what happened.
Well,
And
speaking of that, it seems me and Daniel have a little bit of crow eaten from last week. We picked the fish, we picked the Dolphins, and they got crushed,
mm-hmm,
and the Bills. So we have to do a little sorry, King James. But I'm gonna take the Eagles, and that's kind of part of my fantasy tonight as far as what my prediction is, fantasy prediction.
well, I'm picking the Eagles tonight. Okay, so last week y'all took uh, the Fins, and I said, "Nah, Fins ain't going to win that." I was right.
You got it.
All right, so let me
You
get
won that.
to the college game of the day that we had, and I'll show the stats and exactly what took place here. So basically, it was a pretty close game through the first two quarters. Okay. Um,
Yep.
when you look at that game, Arizona was playing pretty good up to that point. It was 14-7. And when you look at the amount of yards and everything, you'll see it wasn't that bad. I mean, total yards, Arizona had 324 and Kansas State had 393. Now, if you looked at those yards and everything, you would think that game was a lot closer. You you would just
Daniel's
look at
taking Eagles too.
I don't blame him.
Yeah. But
But
yeah, I agree because like it was pretty defensive at the very beginning, and then it just kind of turned into a barn burner.
well, Arizona had one interception they threw, and but that wasn't really where the difference was, in my opinion, was the rushing. And if you look, Arizona only had 2.9 yards per carry, where Kansas State was rushing at 5.9 per carry.
Right.
So, but where it really ended up is, in my opinion, is when um, they had that return. That return, when that return happened by Kansas State, to me, that's when it basically was over at that point. And you, when I was looking at all these stats and everything, and going back because I actually watched the game, uh, I was more impressed with Avery Johnson. He had 17 carries for 110 yards at an average of 6.5. That guy, he was dealing. And when you
Right.
look at that rushing, they had 237 yards rushing compared to 56 for Arizona. The only
Right.
thing Arizona did really good was passing. That was it. And and I would say uh, they didn't do that great at that. So Arizona sort of shocked me in what I thought they were going to be able to do this game. And
Well, I
then,
was pretty sure that the Arizona came out with the 7-0 lead, and then I was pretty sure that K State had to drive down the field to tie it, and then next thing I know, I look back and it was 14. Was that the return you're talking about?
yeah, yeah, and they had, well, that return shifted the momentum, in my opinion.
Right.
And when you get over here and you look at, but I wanted to point one thing out before I get over there. Arizona, I thought they were really going to make it tough on Kansas State. And if you look, Kansas State only had one sack, which
Right.
which is impressive, and they had four tackles for loss. But when you look over here and you look at Arizona, they had three sacks and five tackles for loss. You
Right.
would think, looking at these stats, this game would have been a lot closer than what we're seeing here. And we've said this over and over how things can change. And
Well, yeah, and you
when
have to factor in those big plays.
yeah, and look at that right there where they had the punt return. He had that one punt that he returned for 71 yards, and I think that that's when it really changed. And I'll tell you another part that was impressive, that Kansas State, and it a lot of times it's an underlooked statistic, but they're punting. Their punter had
Right.
two punts and he averaged 51 yards
Oof.
with a long of 55. That can change field possession really quick. That's why it's so great to have a good punter. And then they had the one interception, but the interception was returned 24 yards. I
Yeah.
mean, when you really go in and you start looking at these statistics and stuff and you start breaking it down, you can see where the game changed and made it tough on the other team and they couldn't recover. Now,
Sure.
this is going to be the games of the week next week I was talking about. We're going to have USC and we're going to have Michigan. Now, you got number 11 and 18. I'm curious to see what Michigan does. I think when Michigan played Texas, I just think, well, we'll see this week. But if Michigan wins this game or even makes it close, what that tells me is Texas is really for real
Sure.
because Texas dominated them. I mean, there was not after the first quarter. There was anybody that watched that game at no point thought Texas was in jeopardy. That's how dominant they were. And
Sure.
then we get Utah and Oklahoma State.
That's gonna be good. I'd really like to see the Cowboys, uh, dominate on that game. But like I say, I'm kind of partial to Oklahoma State. You
Well,
know.
there's three football teams I like in college, or my favorite is I like Texas, TCU, and Oklahoma State.
Right.
And one of my best friend, he's big Oklahoma State fan. And anytime they played, it was funny because last year Texas and Oklahoma State played in the Big 12 championship, and we actually went over his house and had grilled out ribs and all kinds of stuff, bunch of beer there, just game week. And Oklahoma State just got demolished. I mean, even Travis, he's there. He goes, yeah. He goes, there ain't no way we're beating Texas. He goes, man, y'all are playing good. And but I really hope Oklahoma State is the one that represents the Big 12. But I think Utah and I I actually think Oklahoma State has a chance to beat Utah. The one I worry about them playing is Kansas State. I think Kansas State has a pretty good team.
Yeah. They look pretty sharp, and granted they were at the Bill Snyder family stadium, but I mean,
We're
they
going to
had
hear
little
that
home.
every week from now on, as long as they're doing good. And
I know.
then you got Tennessee and Oklahoma. If Tennessee runs over Oklahoma, I think Tennessee moves up. You know,
Yeah.
until proven otherwise. If Oklahoma, I mean, they're playing at Oklahoma, but I watched Oklahoma play. They just don't look that good to me. I just don't see it. But those are going to be my three games of the week next week that I'm going to go over and cover, and I'm gonna uh, I'm gonna be watching these on my phone, streaming them on my phone because I'm gonna be on my way down to Austin Saturday. We're going to watch them play Louisiana Monroe, which they should kill them, but we're going because it's a night game, and we want to go and see all the drones and everything, through the sky and be there at night when they're lighting everything up. So that's
Oh,
going
that'd
to
be
be
awesome.
yeah, I'm looking forward to going. A bunch of us are going down there. It's going to be a good time. So,
Oh, that's cool. Right on. Well, good job on that breakdown. Uh, well, I couldn't have done better myself.
well, one thing is I love college football, so I watch as many games as I can, and I always try to pick the top games. And even if Texas is playing, I'm going back and forth, catching different games and stuff. But if it's not Texas playing, then I'll put four games up, But when it's Texas, I'm watching. That's the full screen. So, uh,
Well, and it kind of looks back into like the whole fantasy thing, because a lot of the college players, the Heisman Trophy winners stuff, are going to be like leaders in fantasy, and that was kind of the angle that they had, with the fantasy football stuff.
mhm.
Um, was trying to pick. They said that back then they didn't have any good information. They actually drafted. There was one time where they drafted a guy that was dead, and they drafted guys that were out of the league that weren't even in the league,
Yeah.
and it was just because they didn't have that real good information, back in the '80s and stuff, because they didn't have like the internet,
Well,
and
back in the
so
80s, I mean, you literally had scouts that were out constantly at college campuses watching football practices and doing all that, taking notes and and learning about all the different players and all that. Today, God, you can get I mean, they still go and do that, but you can get tons and tons of information just through the internet, you
dude,
know.
honestly, I was blown away. Like, I did not expect Kamara to have the day that he had. I mean, I started the day losing. I was down by like 25 points or something, and then Kamara comes through for 44, and I think I'm at like 144 now,
Hmm.
expected to go to 160 on my fantasy, and expected to win, which I was blown away because I literally won that match just because of Kamara,
Hmm.
So I mean,
Sure.
and Dallas's defense, so
Stinky.
that was a yeah. That'll be one of my things coming up for the fantasy breakdown.
All right, let's go ahead and cue you up and get you ready to do all your NFL for this
All
week.
right. Now it's time for Willie's NFL breakdown, power rankings, and fantasy.
All right,
All
I've got you
right.
set up here for your top 20 or your top divisions and everything first.
Okay. Cool. Well, we had some kind of big movers this week. Vikings played real well. Packers won. Obviously the Saints moved up. They had just a real crushing defeat. Cowboys. Some surprises with like the Raiders beating the Ravens. The Ravens didn't move too much in the power ranking. They're still they looked at that kind of like a fluke. Chiefs looked solid. Um, Patriots actually are crawled out of the basement from the last place up to 27. They actually barely lost that game. That was a pretty good game. Like I say, I'm expecting the Eagles to do pretty good tonight. And like I say, we're all everyone here, me, James, and Daniel J over there are predicting the Eagles to win tonight. Like I say, I think Atlanta is actually a little bit better than what people think. Like I say, it's gonna be close, but when you look at it, Atlanta gave up 131 yards on the ground last week. So I think that Eagles running game has a chance to get going tonight. So we'll see how that plays out. I think the game probably already started when we started the show. But like I say, Falcons are there at ranked at number 22. So there's a chance that they could move up with a solid performance against the Eagles tonight. But then you look at like the Bengals, pulling it off. It's kind of hit or miss what the Bengals are going to be like. Seahawks had a good day. Um, Arizona just crushed. Like, I was blown away. I expect Arizona to move up. They're sitting at 19 right now. I had Ayuk and with the 49ers, and then I had Murray, quarterback for the Cardinals. So they had good days. But like I say, it's pretty much the same as what we kind of anticipated. The Chiefs to stay strong, but I guess their running back got hurt. So that's gonna be interesting for all you guys out there in fantasy. Might have to throw the Chiefs running back. Can't remember what his name is, but he's still up there. But it sounds like he's gonna be out for 3 weeks. So um, he's got a looked like somebody rolled up on his ankle. His ankle got twisted up in the pile, so he's gonna be out. So that'll be something to be putting on your radar. But altogether, I think this is pretty accurate. I'm still predicting the Lions to possibly win the Super Bowl. Um, like I say, the big bet right now is Chiefs to win back to back to back, and that's never been done in NFL history. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen. It's hard to say,
It's hard
but
to do.
I think that we have a solid top five in there. Chiefs number 1, Niners number 2. We have Bills number 3. Bills had a really strong game. They looked really solid. Eagles number 4 and Lions number 5 is top 5 of the NFL.
I like you got the Texans at 6. I think the Texans going to be pretty good.
Yeah, they actually had a strong performance too, and like I say, I kind of played around a little bit with the numbers on the divisions. I actually bless you.
Thanks.
Actually put the AFC West at number 1. I don't know that that's gonna be really correct, but it was like the closest I could do with the Chiefs being number 1, and then the NFC North actually moved down. Just the only real strong team in there is the Lions. Packers actually looked pretty solid. They had the Packers and Cowboys tied at number 10, but I had to move the Packers up to 10 and put the Cowboys down to 11, just because that's where I felt like they belonged, And there was
That's
another
not
tie.
it. And that's just fucking jealousy.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like just you have a little tiebreaker, like maybe the NFC East deserves to be just a little bit higher than number 5, but like I say, you have the NFC South that I moved up to number 3, like having the Saints and the Bucks. Baker Mayfield actually had a strong game. He looked pretty decent, and so they'll. If you guys have a fantasy and you're able to pick up Mayfield, I might trade him. Never know. He's on my bench.
That's pretty good. That's a
So
good breakdown.
yeah, we'll
I like
see.
it. All right.
Yeah. So if you go into like the game of the week stats, it's really hard to see. This is our basically our player stats. What actually is that sheet? Is that
Well, what that
part?
is, that's just the team stats, just sort of showing what took place and all of that,
Okay.
and basically just gives the yards, which is interesting because when you look at the Bills, they had 247 total yards, and the Finns had 351.
Wow.
But but they still lost. So when you get over here, and this is about the best I can get it, where I can get everything on here,
Okay.
but but it literally goes in and it breaks down what happened during the game. And I'll tell you the biggest takeaway I had from it is usually when you see Tua, he's usually around 300 yards a game. He only had 145 yards passing, and they actually had better rushing. They had 139 yards rushing, whereas Buffalo only had 108. And Josh
Right.
Allen, he only threw for 139 yards. So two of the prolific quarterbacks didn't have big passing yards. It really came down to a few things that happened here and there. Well, uh, and this
Didn't
is,
didn't Josh Allen have 2 rushing touchdowns? I thought he had two
uh,
passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns.
I know he had one passing, and I know James Cook, he had two Russian TDs. Josh Allen didn't have a Russian TD that I remember. I
Okay.
actually recorded it and went back watched it. Let me look here. Let's see. Yeah, Josh Allen didn't have. James Cook had two Russian TDs.
Gotcha.
So, and
Okay.
then when you came over here, which was uh, interesting, is uh, Buffalo, when you look at the stats and everything, where did that game change from? Well, it was three interceptions by Buffalo.
True.
So, uh, and one of them was returned for a pick six by Jamarcus Ingram. which he took back for a TD. So when you look at the game of the week, this is basically what took place. It was the interceptions that really caused the problem for Miami, and
True.
uh, I sort of made me wonder if that's why they were running the ball as much because of those
Right.
interceptions. But to me, that for the game of the week, that is what really took place. Was the interceptions were the key to the game that changed the game on a dime that actually hurt the Finns.
True.
So, and then we got
So
your fantasy stuff.
this is Rising Rhinos Chatter League. So if you get a chance, jump over there to Rising Rhinos YouTube channel, and you'll hear a bunch of the trash talk on there. Cameron is a guy that comes on here. He was actually power ranked number one in the league, and he lost this week. But this is the results. I went through. I don't think any of these are technically going to change because the points were so far ahead, and like I say, got old Willie's Wild Team up to 2-0 this week. Rising Rhino won; he's up to 2-0. Like I say, it's a lot of fun to do. Um, and like I say, I was not expecting Cameron to lose this week. I mean, he was projected at like 132, and then he ended up losing to Run CMC Sandy, and I think it was pretty close. I think it was like maybe like a point or two that he lost by. Um, but it's a lot of fun doing fantasy. I appreciate Rising Rhino getting that set up and inviting me over, and like I say, the winner this week from fantasy, this is all based on my opinion, was Alvin Kamara with 44 points. The loser this week was Dallas defense with negative point 94, and then tonight my showdown for one of my fantasy leagues is Kyle Pitts. The guy I'm against is Kyle Pitts of Atlanta. I need him to hit about 9 points, and then I'm going against Shaquan. I have Shaquan Barkley. I need him to hit about right around 30. So, like I say, there's a possibility that I could lose tonight on my fantasy, but at the same time, it's like I just need Kyle Pitts to be anywhere 10 or below, and Shaquan Barkley to be anywhere above like 27 to 30 somewhere. So we'll see if that plays out. But like I say, that's kind of my prediction, but it's still not 100% solid. So basically, what I have for the top three quarterbacks in fantasy, which is just based on my opinion from what I looked at, was Josh Allen as number one, Jalen Hurts number two, and Lamar Jackson number three. We'll see what happens with Jalen Hurts tonight. He could move down. Running backs, I have number one, Alvin Kamara, New Orleans. I have number two, Shaquan Barkley, Philadelphia, and number three, Bijan Robinson from Atlanta. We'll see. He might have, Robinson might have a good night. Wide receivers, I have number one, Tyreek Hill, number two, CD Lamb, Dallas, and number three, I have Amon St. Brown from Detroit. And then with tight ends, I have Sam Laporte from Detroit. Number two, I have Travis Kelsey. Number three, I have George Kittle from San Fran. And then with the kickers, Brandon Aubrey, number one. Number two, Jake Elliott from Philly. We'll see tonight if he has a good night. I have him tonight. And then number three, I have Harrison Bunker. Then the defenses, top defenses, I have number 1 San Fran, number 2 Steelers, number 3 Chargers, number 4 Ravens, and then I have to still put the Cowboys at number 5, so I think they'll bounce back and have a good week next week. And the Broncos defense is at number 18, so that's not too bad, And then, like I say, Bo Picks Nix is not on the list of quarterbacks, but he earned the name Bo Picks Nix last week on Rising Rhino show on the live stream. So
Bo Picks Nix.
Yeah, but I mean,
all right, you got your last one, which we'll queue up, which will be the final countdown.
All right. Time for the final countdown of the week. All right, yeah, it was awesome. I have to give it to my number 1 ranked Kansas City Chiefs. They beat the Bengals, and they were trailing by 2 points in the final minutes of the game. They drove down the field and got themselves set up in field goal range and kicked the winning field goal to win and beat the Bengals. Like I say, the Bengals have been power ranked really high, and I think the Chiefs shown how they could come back and win and show that they are number 1. Like I say, I have the Bengals ranked down at I think they're at number 12. But like I say, to show that these teams could just battle it out, and like I say, the Chiefs, they are been a clutch team in the past few years, and their final countdown moment was no different. Go down the field and kick the winning field goal. So looks like you show 90 rushing yards, and like I say, that is going to be interesting to see how they're able to overcome with Isaiah Pacheco, because Isaiah Pacheco is on injury reserve for 3 weeks. It's looking like right now is what the early projection is. So hopefully you guys have some backup running backs on your fantasy to put in for Isaiah Pacheco, because I know he actually did good on my fantasy. Actually, he's one of my starters, so I'm gonna have to figure out backup to replace Isaiah Pacheco this week.
Well, I'll say this:
that is final countdown moment.
I watched the game, and Kansas City was lucky to win that game.
True.
They were lucky to win it. I don't care what anybody says. I watched the game, and I did not see any. I mean, they just got some timely calls. It sort of reminds me. I'll tell you, and I'm going to do this next week. If I see a game where I think they were helped by the refs, and I'll give you an example. Was the LSU South Carolina game? They had 3 calls on South Carolina. I'm telling you what, I don't even know why you have instant replay. I mean, if you can't see that, there was some things that happened in that game. I think South Carolina got the screws put to them. I mean, it was just ridiculous. I mean, they called this one on the receiver interference. All you have to do, I mean, even if you watch the game, even the announcers were saying it. But this receiver comes out and he didn't even really touch the guy. He was just sort of in front of him, and the receiver breaks, catches the long ball, and they called interference on him. I mean,
Right.
I was sitting there and I was like, are we watching two different games? I mean, I was amazed that they let that stand. I mean, I don't blame the South Carolina. He was losing his mind over it. But
True.
there was just some games, and I think I can take. I'm looking into it right now where I see they show in some of these others, they show these games and stuff. They do reaction videos and things like that. I'm sort of curious if you can take, well, they're doing it, so I think it'd be okay, where I can just download that and just clip those things and show plays like that.
Yeah, you have to be really careful with that. Like I say, there is people that are like endorsed. Like I know Steve Dangle from like the sports. There's some of these sports guys that are like they actually pay for the endorsement and everything, and they could show the whole entire game if they want. But I don't know. I'd have to like look into it too. But it would be cool to show like some replays and stuff.
Well, I see all kinds of. It's after the game's over. It's not something
True.
that's during the game, and
True.
people
I
got
agree.
all these clips and everything. I think, well, hell, I mean, I see them even on different ones where they're showing different plays and stuff. I'm thinking, well, hell, I didn't know you could do that. I guess if you're keeping them under 30 seconds, which you would be, you know, and I was thinking we might try that and show some of the close calls and discuss it.
Yeah, and there was some like you can't say anything about the Chiefs game without saying some kind of controversy with the refs. Like it seems like every game there's something that happens with like the refs, calling some controversial play that like gives the Chiefs an extra down or you know whatnot. Controversial pass interference calls, controversial like. There was a lot. Like I know that coach was furious at the end of that game. You know.
Oh, yeah.
And I agree with you. Like I don't know that they deserve to have that much time on the clock when they were going down the field. And there's a bunch of stuff that they kind of got breaks in their direction. So I agree with you. And like I say, it's one of those things that I just pick a game and do it for my final countdown and. The Chiefs ended up being on the winning end of that. I don't know. I think that it's gonna come to a point where they're not gonna get that much luck, you know. And if they start getting down really far in a game, I know there's been times where Mahomes has willed his team back from 10 or 14 points down just at the last minutes, and it's actually incredible. So like I say, that's why they got the final countdown win this week.
Yep. Last second, no time on the clock. That's what final countdown is. You were like, yep. I don't want to put the Chiefs out there. Hey, that doesn't matter.
Yeah. I was fine with it. Like I say, it was kind of the whole reason I didn't want to do Chiefs was just because of how they're always controversial at the last minutes of the game. But they got it.
All right, so, you ready for your Willie quiz?
Dude, it's easy. Super easy, dude.
Get ready, Daniel.
You are now entering the zone of the Willie Quiz. Enter at your own risk.
so I have a little advice for Daniel. Is make sure you copy King James on this one because he pretty much probably knows all these answers. So it was worth a shot. I probably could have got you on a couple of them, but I already know you know this one. So, in what year was the first fantasy football league created? Was it A, 1980? Was it B, 1962? Was it C, 1965? Was it D, 1970? Or was it E, 1982? Good luck, everyone. Now, if you would have asked me this one probably about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I probably wouldn't have known the answer. So,
Why couldn't you put? As I know it was in the '60s. God dang! Why couldn't you have two 1970 somethings? Oh, I'm gonna do a flip. Heads for 62, B for 65. I got head 62.
All right, and Daniel copies your coin flip, and you're correct. It was 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Okay.
And it was like I was surprised it was that early. I thought I would have guessed probably in like the 70s.
I knew it was back in the 60s. I remember when fantasy football started taking off, there was somebody, I was trying to remember the guy's name. He did, it was on, I think it was CBS or something. They had a thing talking about fantasy football and because I was shocked back then when they were saying it actually started back, is when it really started taking off, which is probably really about the late 80s. You know?
Yeah, so basically it really started getting popular in 1969 with one of the creator's friends actually bought a bar, he actually started putting it in his bar, and that was the first time when they actually encouraged women to join.
Well, I remember they started doing it, but when it became nationally, and people were involved, was like in the late 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
All right, let's move on. All right, who is credited with creating the first fantasy football league? Was it A, Bill Winkenbach? Was it B, Pete Rozelle? Was it C, George Halas? Was it D, Vince Lombardi? Or was it E, Mike Ditka? Good luck, everyone.
Well, this is interesting because I said Wizenhunt earlier, so I go with A.
so this was like really interesting because I always wondered why Mike Ditka had Refrigerator Perry run the ball in the Super Bowl. It was for his fantasy league.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that.
I knew that.
And looks like you copied Daniel's answer, A. So A is correct. It was Bill Winkenbach, and I guess his actual full name was Willard Winkenbach, but like he was part owner of the Raiders back in the '60s, and I guess he was getting made fun of a lot for them having really bad records. So
That's interesting because I remembered it. I think what I say, Wizenhunt or something like that. I knew it was
Yeah,
something like that.
I
Yeah.
should have put Wizard Hunt in there. That would have been good. All right, number 3. What was the name of the first fantasy football league? Was it A, the Fantasy Football Founders? Was it the Greater Oakland Professional Pigskin Prognostic League? Was it C, the Football Fanatics? Was it D, the National Fantasy Football League? Or was it E, the Pigskin Pick'em League? Good luck, everyone.
Well,
I told you this was easy.
I said this earlier. I said I know it started over in California and Oakland. I didn't know the name of the league, but I'll go with B because I know the first one started in Oakland, and that makes sense because he was owner of the Oakland Raiders.
Well, it looks like you copied Daniel again, so you guys are 3-0 so far. So
That's funny.
some pretty good guesses. All right, so question number 4. Fantasy football initially became popular through which format? Was it A, over the phone? Was it B, magazines? Was it C, newspapers? Was it D, offline drafts with friends? Or was it E, bar events? Good luck, everyone.
Well, that's interesting because you made the comment earlier that they did it in bars, but I thought where it become popular was through drafts, which is what I've always thought. So I'm going with D. It may be E, but I thought it was through drafts. So I'll go with D.
James, man. Oh, man.
What you got,
Uh,
Daniel?
looks
Magazine.
like
That's
Daniel's
actually
going
pretty good
magazine.
because I every year I still buy them, and I've told this before. I always buy every year the Dave Campbell's Texas Football that comes out about the end of June, and sometimes you can get them earlier than that. And I always buy all the college ones for Lindy's and Athlon, and also do the pro, and then also sporting news. I buy six, seven. I buy seven different magazines for pro and college.
Well, I'm sorry to say, James, but you're correct. You got it right. It was
Yep.
actually offline drafts with friends, and
Hmm.
like to me, when you look at it, that's incredible that it spread by mouth like that. Like I probably would have done it a lot sooner. Like my brother's been doing it for 20 years, you know. But like my brother has like 12 championships or something crazy, you know. Like he won
Well,
like
it's
7 years in a
interesting
row.
because I like Daniel's answer, and I'll tell you why. Because you used to get those magazines, and like if I got the Dave Campbell's uh, Texas Football, it had the top 300 players ranked in order for the state of Texas, and
True.
college coaches used to buy the magazine. I mean, they wanted to know who they were ranking and all that. I mean, it was a big publication, and then when you used to look at Athlon, Lindy's, and Sporting News, they always had the section in there that dealt with mainly, which was a big section, was the upcoming draft, who they projected for the next
True.
draft. And if you remember back then, the only ones that you would have in there were juniors and seniors. and they
Well,
knew who might come out.
they were saying that when they first started the original fantasy, that they were always trying to call like different sporting places and try to get information. And so magazines make sense because they would actually get that inside information of who's going to be like those top prospects that are going to come out in the draft. And then, you know what I mean? Because they actually said in the first, when they were first doing it, that they were drafting players that were dead, and they were drafting players that weren't even in the league because they didn't know.
Yep, they didn't
And
know.
I think that the one that was dead, the guy suddenly died, so that was
And,
crazy. But
and it's interesting because magazines were, and newspapers were big too. I remember back we used to get the Fort Worth Star Telegram, and I'd also get the Dallas one. And every year, they would have the top high school prospects, a recruiting section. I mean, they actually had their own recruiting staffs and everything, and draft staffs when the draft was coming up. Even the
true.
newspapers had it, but it all transpired off of the drafts and who you were recruiting and stuff.
Right.
I remember playing that. I mean, I can bring my dad on here. He'll tell you, oh yeah, you want to know about recruiting, draft boards. He'd say, talk to James because he freaking studies that stuff. Matter of fact, he would just ask me who's like one year we were there, we were watching the draft, and I'll never forget this. Randy Moss hadn't been picked yet, and I
Right.
jumped up. I said, "We're gonna get Randy Moss! I can't freaking believe it!" And Dad goes, "Who's that?" I said, "Oh man, that's that receiver Martin." I said, "He's a bad dude, man." I said, "I can't believe Dallas is about to get him." Then they passed on him. And then, of course, Minnesota got him. I was like, "You freaking got man!" I was so upset. And Dad goes, "Well, maybe this
That's
other
funny.
player's better." And I said, "No, he isn't." And then, of course, we saw what happened. Randy Moss, one of
Yeah.
the greatest receivers ever to play
He
the game.
he was really close to going to the Super Bowl too
Yeah.
that one year, but
If
all right.
Randy Moss would have come to Dallas with the talent, oh God, man, they'd have been unbelievable. But
True. All
anyway,
right. Question number 5. Let's round this off with Daniel victory against King James. All right. Which platform helped popularize online fantasy football in the late 1990s? Was it A, ESPN? Was it B, CBS Sports? Was it C, Yahoo? Was it D, NFL.com? Or was it E, America Online? Good luck, everyone.
well, this is interesting because I brought this up earlier, and I said I couldn't remember if it was ABC or CBS that actually were the ones that were talking about it, and they actually had a show on it where they were doing online fantasy and talking about it in the drafts and all that. So I don't see ABC on there. So I will stick with my original one before we started everything, the CBS.
All right, James. Well, it's kind of my attention that Daniel actually has the correct answer. It's Yahoo, and they actually still have a really popular online fantasy program. Actually, Yahoo actually edged out all the other answers out there combined. So if you put
Mm,
all those combined, they actually edge it out. So Daniel actually has to take the win and tie with you with 4 correct answers. So
damn.
good job, Daniel, for doing his research. But like I say, I had to try to rig it a little bit to, at least, get you to do a podcast about me. I need to have a King James podcast about me. But
I didn't go
yeah,
5 for
Daniel.
5. I can't believe it. Oh, you played a
Oh
bunch of
yeah,
them.
yeah. Yeah, Yahoo was a pretty big one, and like I say, I did a little bit of research. I did my podcast on the Willie Jackerson experiment this week on fantasy, and Yahoo came up a lot, and it was pretty crazy because I hadn't really messed around with Yahoo too much, but they actually did have a lot of fantasy involvement in the early days. So that was like in the before the internet really got huge, but like Yahoo now has like real time scoring and all kinds of stuff. So they all have pretty much the same stuff, and
Oh yeah.
like I say, I'm predicting that the Eagles are gonna win and win me my third game this weekend, but we'll see. I don't know. Like I say, I have to get 30 points. That's hard to get from a running back, and especially Broncos running back. But like I say, Williams did all right for me. I think he got 9 points, so that wasn't too bad. So
The Eagles are up 7-3 right now.
all right,
Matter of fact, I'm about to go watch the game.
yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with us this week. Really appreciate it. Thanks, King James, for putting together. I'll keep trying to improve on my stuff. We got to get a Jaws for Daniel. You know, we need to have him like dun 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 dun. You know, have Daniel swoop in there, and like every time, like we'll have to do like something like at the end of the quiz, like to see if he's gonna actually beat you and beat the 6-time Willie Quiz champ against King James.
I don't think it's fair they automatically get a win if we tie.
Well, you already you have the answers like way before you have the questions like way before Daniel. So you know,
Shit.
I mean, it's not like you're in the dark, but
If I had the answers, I'd get every one of them right.
I try to do as much as I can to keep you in the dark as much as possible, so that I keep it fair for the people out there in the chat. So
I just
thanks a
like
lot.
this week. I
Joining.
knew I'd actually seen documentaries on it, so I had a pretty good idea. So
Yeah, the reason I decided to do it was just more for people to like to kind of get it out there and kind of get like kind of that common knowledge, and it means a lot that not only did you know some of them, but that everyone else got to see, you know, firsthand that I'm not rigging anything. I'm you know, throwing them up there, so it's 100% fair. I don't need any more people out there making podcasts about me and you know how much I suck. So it is what it is. You know, like I say, I just try every day to make every day an easy day. That's all I want to do.
it's like I always, have a lot of good friends and stuff, and there was we go up, like I was at the pool hall Friday night playing pool league. There's this lady up there. She goes, she goes, I've been coming up here for about 2 years. She goes, I don't think I've ever seen. I said, hell no. I said, I treat every day like it's the perfect day in the world. I said, I just try to be happy every day, do what I do, and I don't get mad. Although I did almost get mad one night. The guy comes up with my face, and he talks about the thing. But other than that, hell, I hardly ever get up. Dude, I ain't working. I got other things going out. And
Yeah, I think it's hilarious when we're in a bunch of trash talking NFL things, and like I say, I'm totally fine trash talking the Broncos. I'm totally fine trash talking the Cowboys, especially the Cowboys. Especially if you have Cowboy jacks. Cowboy jokes are accepted in this podcast, you know. But and like I say, Bronco jokes are accepted too, you know. Like I say, we'll see. I think Bo Nix will actually do all right. Like I don't think that we're gonna be like the only first time ever the Broncos have ever come from 0-2 to get in the playoffs. Like I don't remember exactly how many how many teams have done it, but it's not very many. It's like I think it's only like a couple teams in history have ever come back from 0-2 to make it to the playoffs. I think one of them was the Giants that year when they beat the Patriots, and they were like 7-9, and they beat the Patriots that were undefeated. The only loss the Patriots had that year. So this goes to show you, you know, at any given Sunday, any given Monday, we can come in there, swoop in there, and tell you that you should have done different, you know. So,
well, I tell this to everybody. Everybody should be definitely watching next week, 'cause we're gonna have some good college games to discuss next week. So,
sure.
and this is my favorite part. You know, the first couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks usually in there, you know, there's no big games hardly. There's a few here and there, you know, but it's usually about that fourth, fifth game of the year when the nut cracking starts and you start seeing who's going to move where. So next week, you're going to see some movement in the top 25 in college. I can tell you that's going to happen next week. And I mean, you got 6 teams playing each other in the top 25. Actually, you have 8 teams. I left 2 of them out. They were lower. But you're going to see some movement next week. 4 teams are going to drop. It's just going to happen. So,
all right. So I have a bonus question for you to end the show.
Okay.
What team has not won an NFC championship game this century?
An NFC championship game?
But it's their year. No, I'm just kidding.
But it's their year. Cowboys?
Yeah. I just love bombing on the old Cowboys, brother. But no, it's funny because like I would like to see him like not choke. Oh. So what color dragon do you want this year?
They're gonna suck. I can already tell you. I mean, they look terrible.
Did I say something funny, Daniel?
No. I'll tell you what. I don't appreciate this team enough that's going on. It's hurting my feelings. Okay, I got to come back for that. You ready? Who's the number one team in college football? Oh.
Hook 'em horns. Gotta give you the old hook 'em horns.
I could shit talk too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Jerry Jones every year is their year.
I think that's the only phrase he knows anymore. He's gotten too old. I don't think he knows anything different.
Dude, I gotta give you the hook 'em horns, dude. Everyone in the chat give old King James the hook 'em horns this week. He's number one, so we gotta give you that, brother.
When I was watching that Oregon game, I was like, Oregon's going to drop. I mean, they got to drop. I mean, there was no way about it. I said, they actually Texas going to be number one. But what was interesting is the coaches poll didn't move them to number one. It was just the AP. They still kept Georgia number one. And somebody was saying something about it. I said, well, the coaches don't ever watch the games. You know, they're busy coaching, doing their own thing, and then they come in, just fill them out. They usually have somebody probably fill them out for them. And when you look at the AP, you know, they're watching all the games, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, man, they shouldn't even won that game, you know. And that's what I'm saying. You got this week 8 teams in the top 25 playing each other. Then you got some others the next week. But you got to bye with Alabama and Georgia. Then that next week in 3 weeks they play each other. You're going to start seeing movement. It's going to happen. So
it's going to be a big dogfight with Alabama and Georgia. Like I say, I think Alabama's kind of been brought down to earth a little bit, but like I say, we'll see what happens. I mean, I feel that what really helps Georgia is the size of their offensive line. Like, that's just really hard to overcome for no matter how good your defensive rush is.
Well, I think I heard somewhere their top offensive lineman got hurt, and I think he's out for a suspended amount of quite a bit of time. I'm telling you, watching all of them so far, the team as far as an offensive line that has really, really impressed me is Texas. They, when you look, and it's like I was listening to this one podcast, and I think it's called Maze Blue or something, but he said, I don't care what anybody says. He says, when the draft comes this next year, he said, you're looking at 2 possible first-round picks on the defensive line for Michigan. He said they handled them, no problem at all. They didn't get back there and sack him or anything like that. They held that good defensive end. And, he said, and if you look at Sarkisian, what he did, the Texas coach, he said he winded those defensive tackles because they were swinging everything quick and outside. Said that they basically what he did, he took their strength away from them. And said that he wore them out so much from running. Then all of a sudden you saw them running the ball down their throat. I mean, you look what they give up the first week, 26 yards rushing. Texas had 140 something. And I think last week until the end, I guess they were resting people, but they hadn't hardly given up maybe 20 yards rushing in that game. That's why I'm waiting to see what USC does against them. So,
yeah, and I'm guessing that's going to be dissected.
Oh, I'm going to dissect that game. That's going to be a good game. And I just see that there's 3 games next week. I think USC Michigan's going to be a great game. I think Utah and Oklahoma State's going to be a really good game. And I also think Tennessee and Oklahoma. Well, I don't even think that's going to be a good game. I just, Oklahoma's up there at number 15, but I think Tennessee's going to show their true weaknesses next week.
Well, there's some history too with USC Michigan. Like I'll never forget my brother talk about that Rose Bowl when they did like that quarterback, that halfback pass, and won the Rose Bowl, beat Michigan. Like my brother, like I can't remember exactly, but he punched something and like broke his hand. But like
he's a true fan, baby.
Oh yeah, like I'll never forget my brother around in a cast. Like what happened? He's like USC won the Rose Bowl, But I was like, no, what'd you punch or whatever. But it was just kind of looking back on how much like lineage that my family has with football and how much we just enjoy the game, and we just pride ourselves on just having fun and winning. And like I say, I wouldn't punch a wall over the hook of horns. I got to keep my horns up, I can't have broken hand with my horns up. So
I never get that mad. I may be pissed off they lost, but I never get so mad. I'll just be like, God dang. But now you got 12-team playoff, 1 loss doesn't kill you.
Right.
So, and that's what's going to be. And I'll say that's what's going to be great about this year. That's why you want to keep up with the top 25 because you got 12 teams going in. And I fully expect in a few years for them to jump it up to 16. So,
I agree.
My dad and I were talking about it. I said, you watch this year, there will be more people watching college football than they have any other. And the ratings are already starting to show more people are watching college football now because they know 1 loss doesn't kill you.
True. Yeah, so, it was like always undefeated forever, and now it's not so much. So
yeah, it's going to be a great season. I'm so pumped to watch the rest of the year. So,
all right, dude. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for going and checking out our Monday Morning Coach page on Facebook. And thanks for subscribing. Thanks for the likes. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to smash that like button before you exit the building. And thanks for joining, Daniel. Thanks for joining, everyone. Really appreciate it. And remember, make every day an easy day.
Amen. We'll see some of y'all Thursday. And after that, enjoy college football weekend. Have a good week.